But your second day had only just arrived. Only one corner of the world outside the window had any sunlight. The rest was all shadows. The lights in the house had to be turned on for you to see your own hands. You left when it was that early. Your mom had to really work hard to get you up. You didn't mind that. Oh my goodness. You thought it should be criminal to make people have to be awake this early. But your home phone wasn't working yet, so you couldn't call the police or the mayor to complain. At least your mom didn't start making you do chores. The unpacking wouldn't be started again until a lot later. That's what your mom said when you were brushing your teeth. For now, you both only had what was already out. The food around to eat was still just the same stuff from yesterday. It was what you had for breakfast already, and you could see your mom packing it into a brown paper bag for lunch, too. That was the last of the preparation she had to do for your school, you were pretty sure. Your mom really wanted to be the one to get your supplies for the day together. She put stacks of stapled papers, a notebook, your pencil case, a ruler, and more into your backpack. Mom had kept the pack on the middle seat of the car to make sure it would be right there when it was time to use it for class. If it had gone missing, maybe you wouldn't have to carry your school stuff in a cardboard box, the same way you had to bring everything else you owned to this place in big boxes. You watched her from your comfy spot on your sleeping bag. You'd already gotten dressed for the day, but that didn't mean you couldn't sit in bed again. There wasn't anywhere else to sit. Soon, you'll be leaving the new old house and the neighborhood and all the parts of the Golden Grove you've gotten to see so far. The next stop into the unknown was North Acres Elementary School. You kind of wondered why your mom was bothering with making you bring so many things. None of the stuff in a backpack would make you prepared for that. But school thoughts were shaken out of your head when a muffled thumping sound filled the air. Mom slowly lowered her full hands down to the counter, and the same time her head and eyebrows went up. Guest, already at this hour? Your mom left your lunch bag incomplete on the tabletop and went to investigate the knocking. Got up to seat 2. You ran to stick by your mom. You dashed forward. Stayed sitting. You got up to seat 2. You pressed your hands into the shiny stuffed bedding underneath you as you leaned onto your feet to get off the floor. You were able to join Mom before she opened the door. She pushed the long handle down with a click and tugged the door forward. It squeaked open. You glanced ahead, squinting your eyes to adjust from the complete brightness inside the pale dawn outside. Standing tall on the welcome mat, seeming totally at home at your home, was the new friend you had met the day before, Mr. Q Lin. Though he said he was also called Autumn, which I love. I forget what I was calling him before, but I'm going to keep calling him, I think I'm just going to call him Autumn. I think that's really sweet. Okay. You were going to try using the nickname sometimes, but you just called him by his actual name. I think I'm going to keep calling him by his nickname, yeah. Autumn's fluffy hood was tucked snugly around his head. He didn't usually do that, at least based on how much you knew was usual for him. Maybe it was because the air was somehow even more skin-prickling cold in the morning than it was during the day or evening. You shuddered just from the wind coming through the opening. When he caught the sight of you there, a plucky grin took over his face. He popped onto the balls of his feet, getting even taller, and cheered a greeting. "Good morning!" Seeing who it was, you scooted past your mom. There was a shoved Nervously shifted, started to place, stayed to greet your guest, and place wondering if it was too late to go back. Yeah, enthusiastically. Laughed openly, complete, completely pleased that you'd come over to him. He mirrored your move, so he was facing you instead of Mom. Let's see. What do we want to say? Thanks for. Oh, that's a good one. Waved excitedly. Autumn stayed put. Autumn stayed put in the new place he took, but angled his head up over to give his focus to your mom. I'm Culin. I'm your neighbor, and the same as Miss Ashley. The two of us met yesterday. Yes, I've heard. I've been anticipating getting to meet you, and those feelings were well placed. You're so polite. Autumn straightened it out. The line of his bandana with both hands. Straightened out the line of his bandana with both hands, giggling cheekily as he made direct eye contact with you. Well, if somebody has been talking about me, I hope it was the good stuff. Now, I should introduce myself as well. I'm Miss Oak, Ashley's mother. It's nice to meet you. May I speak with Ashley, Miss Oak? There's something I want to talk to her about. Thoughtfully, your mom's glance drifted down to you without looking back at him. Your mom replied, That'll be fine. I'll finish getting your bag ready, Ashley. You two can chat. Autumn clasped his hands together primly. Thank you very much. Mom let a content smile rest on her face as she walked back inside the house, leaving you alone with Autumn. You looked back at him eagerly. It was only the morning and something good was already happening. What did you want to say? Autumn didn't beat around the bush with you. He probably didn't with anyone. He came right out with it with what he had in mind. Want to walk to school together? It's the first day. He squared his shoulders and held out his hand, counting off points on his fingers. We're going to the same place in the same grade. There's a good chance we'll even be in the same class. Going together would make everything so easy. Let's say yeah. He popped an enthusiastic double thumbs up. And guess what else is a reason for why we should walk together? What? His gaze got sharper, but it didn't feel scary at all. The glance was like a fancy cut jewel rather than a pointy weapon. It's 'cause I want you to be there. He wanted you to hang out with him. So yep, I think it makes sense, a lot of sense, that we go together. With his hands in his pockets, Autumn shifted the whole top half of his body diagonally over to one side. The tilt of his head really showed off the bend in his self-pleased smile. Oh. He flung an arm back out and arched his fingers across the air in front of both of your faces. It might have been so to stop you before you could say anything, or to keep himself from forgetting whatever else he wanted to talk about. And it wouldn't be just us. I'm going to keep going down the cul-de-sac to Granny's house so I can ask Tamarick next. So, that's it. What do you think about all three of us walking together? It's a good plan, right? Makes sense. Great idea. Sure. Oh, we've got to see her, so. It's a great idea. I want to go. You swung your hands behind you and spoke out again. I'll get my backpack and tell my mom we're going. Cool. I'll wait here for you. You parted with Autumn for a second, but didn't bother closing the door. The sound of your feet against the floor was the only noise in the huge house. You couldn't have snuck up on your mom even if you tried. Each step you took brought you closer, and it made the smile on her face grow larger, but you didn't get distracted from her job. But she didn't get distracted from her job. Her gaze stayed stuck to the counter. Mom placed one more paper into your backpack and snapped the plastic clasp on the top flap closed. With that secured, she promptly picked the bag up by the loop handle. She lowered herself down to your height by bending her knees low. Then she offered the backpack over to you. Exceptional timing, dear. Here, you're set to go. It was nice and light when you took the pack from her. That wouldn't last. Soon you have actual school books to bring around with you. What happened with your guest? Did he leave? You answer the question while looping one arm after the other into the wide openings of your backpack straps. He's out there still. Autumn wants me to walk to school with him. Can I go? You shifted your grip to the dangly ends of the armbands, then gave them a swift tug to tighten the straps, fully securing the bag against you. He came over to ask you that? Talk about convenient. The young Mr. Lin must know the way far better than I do. You certainly can walk together. That was exactly what your thought she would say. You could count on her to understand. As she smiled, her face lit up softly, like the early morning sunshine outside. Mom pinched the tip of your chin between her thumb and her pointer finger. Enjoy your first day. There's only one of them per year. Maybe she was right. You still weren't that cheery about going. You didn't feel any better. Yes, maybe she was right. You would look at what was nice instead of what wasn't. Anything could happen. For all you knew, it might be good. She let you go in order to place her hands on her thighs, needing to balance herself as she stiffly straightened up to her full height. Your mom folded her arms proudly, watching you leave for the day. You were going ahead without her. Through the open door, you could see Autumn waiting patiently on your porch still. He turned his back to the house, instead looking around the neighborhood. You came to his side, and that caught his attention. But his gaze didn't go to yours. It went right to the backpack you had on. Autumn grinned hopefully. I told Mom. It's okay. He smacked his hands together enthusiastically. All right, time to go. You know, Ash, it's been forever since I've gotten to walk to school with a friend. A teeny tiny yelp popped out of you, partially because of what he said, and partially because your knees smacked together when he said it. He called you Ash, and he said you were friends. You thought you were, but it was totally different to have him talk about it just like that. I'm glad we're friends. This is great. Really think we are. Thanks for being friends. Thanks for using my nickname. I knew you liked me. I joke, didn't know. I'm glad we're friends. Me too. This is great. He grinned ear to ear. Autumn was full of certainty. Autumn easily swiveled all the way around on his heels. He firmly planted his feet into the floorboards of the porch to close out his move. Then he confidently strode forward and leapt over the little steps to get onto the ground. Autumn had places to be, and nothing was going to stand in his way. Eagerly, you went along with him, down the stone path, past the fence, onto the neighborhood sidewalk. It took less than a minute to get around the bendy curve of your neighborhood that led to the least colorful home on the street, Tamrick's house, also her Ami and Appa's house. Autumn and you wandered right into the uncharted territory of their porch. Tapped out rhythmic set of knocks. You reached forward to knock. You press the doorbell. Are you ready? Let's do this. Autumn brought his arms to his side, shook his head to read just the way his hair fell around his shoulders, and positioned himself squarely in the center of the entryway. Oh, to readjust. That's totally a typo right there. The old door began to jiggle in its frame like it was shivering cold from being outside this early, too. But someone was fiddling with the doorknob on the other side, and then the door swung wide open with a clattering yank, and a gust of flowery perfumed air coming out from the deep inside the house. Still clasping the handle and leaning her head against the wood, Tamrick was there to greet you. She had her bag and scarf on for the day already. Hello! Good morning. Her eyes popped open. She hadn't looked to see who was at her door before saying hello, but she could tell who it was from that answer. Her tone of voice lightened even more. Cute? Ashley? She used your name and not your nickname like Autumn had. Maybe she would use it later, or maybe she forgot. And I like to call her T, so that's what I'm going to be calling her. T kept talking without giving a reason for why she called you that. You both here? Hi! So, my character really likes T, so we're gonna lower our gaze shyly. Autumn kept his very proper pose and offered T the same invitation he'd given you. I'm glad we didn't miss you. We're all going to the same school, right? It'd be cool to walk as a group. Want to? She blinked repeatedly, many times, all in a row. In the soft pink light, her eyelashes looked almost like shimmering dragonfly wings. Wow, okay, I want to come. She twisted almost the whole way around, turning her back to you. You could just barely glimpse the darkened hall behind her. T then leaned over, bending her knees, and powerfully shouted into the depths of the gray house. I'm going to school now! Her loud, high-pitched call echoed through the hallway. Have a good day, young lady. T hopped forward. It was small, but that was all it took to get from being in her house to being in the outside world. She tugged the doorknob with her to slam the door shut. I'm ready! The quickness of all that was too much, and Autumn needed a second to catch up with it. But when he did, he chuckled. Perfect! Autumn lazily settled his hands on his hips, and his eyes moved way off to the side, even though there was nothing special to see that way. Guess we've actually got to go to class. Yeah. She pumped her fist up and down in the air in a pattern that matched the pace of her yas. Here we go. I hope we're not going to be late. We're really excited, you joked. Glad you're coming. Let's go. Yeah! You cheered along with T. Yeah! It was a cheering loop between you and her. All clustered together. You, Autumn, and T trampled off the white wooden porch. The full set of cul-de-sac kids hit the road again. The trip was almost the opposite of last time. The sun was coming up instead of going down, and you were leaving the neighborhood instead of going back to it. But that wasn't really what really stood out to you. It was a little bit amazing. You already could compare it to the last time. And you could guess that this journey with them wasn't going to be the actual last time it ever happened. It had just become the last time it happened before the new next time. The first part of the school trip wasn't hard. There was only one way out of your neighborhood unless someone hiked out into wherever the woods went. That would be cool. Maybe you'd be able to do that someday. Your actual path forward had to brush past the forest fork that originally led you to meeting Autumn and T. But you weren't stuck with the same limits as before. This morning, you moved right on by without even stopping to check what might be hidden away back there. Now you traveled even further. The woods crowded in closer and closer around the one road that led out, till suddenly structures began to appear in between the bushes. The thick overhang of the leaves pulled apart to show the sky. The world unfolded ahead of you. Sunshine climbed the mountains to barely tickle your cheeks while the stars still clustered against your back. You were right in the center of a windy mountain path. It flowed over the uneven ground, blanketing every small bump and bend like a black river. Along the street, huge wooden poles rose into the sky in a row that rivaled the trees. Stretching foam lines and reaching branches wove the whole town together. Even though Golden Grove was a lived-in place with man-made things, the vast wilderness was just as much a neighbor to the residents as the real people neighbors. Teed trampled over the grass, swooshing her arms in full-length swings in front of her. She didn't get anywhere near the tamarack. Autumn's stride was a lot breezier. He took the spot in the line closest to the road and didn't even check for cars. His eyes were aimed at the now viewable sky. You ended up somewhere in between them. If tea was a swoosh and autumn was a breeze, you were a whirlwind. You rushed about, twisting the angle of your head and taking in every new thing that surrounded you. All that air went out the window when Autumn started moving his hands around even more than tea. He frantically stuck his fingers in and out of each one of his pockets while poking his tongue out of the corner of his mouth. You and T just watched as he tugged at his jacket and pants while walking. The two of you probably shared the same exact thought. He was looking for his notebook or paper or something. Aha! And it was paper, but it wasn't his special tan pages. The thing Autumn grabbed was a thick, folded packet of white printer paper that was covered all over in tiny ink words. You could instantly tell what it was. That many papers stapled together with that many little words on them only ever came from one place, school. Autumn held it close to his face. He had his nose completely in what was basically a book. For some reason, he started to talk to you and T. Which room did you get? For a second, Autumn peeked over the pages to look at both of you. Who's your teacher? T thought hard, but she didn't find the answer in her head. She squished her hand under the flap of her bag without unbuckling it. She had to find her own papers. I remember. Check. Let's say I remember my mom told me. Let's see, I'm in room 24, Miss Murray, I'm in room 24. Let's see, I'm in room 24 with Miss Murray. Autumn used his thumbs to bend the papers down. He stopped hiding his face as you could see he was smiling. Wait, that's my room too! T waved her packet in the air in a crinkly flurry. Me three! Oh, we're all in the same class. You cheer. We're gonna be stuck with you forever, Joe. You closed your eyes and smiled. You couldn't believe it. You were going to be in the same class. You couldn't believe it. Let's cheer. Your mom had given you the papers. Autumn probably got his from his mom and dad, and T got her from Ami and Appa. Despite being kind of different, the papers were all the same. A smirk settled in its regular spot on Autumn's face, all according to plan if he somehow could have planned it. We're roommates! He didn't need the packet for anything else, so he stuffed it into his pant pocket with a shrug of one shoulder. There's only 3 5th grade classes we could have been in. When Autumn made sure it was deep enough to not just fall out, he brought both his arms into an even bigger shrug and chuckled too. But Miss Murray, I almost made it without her being my teacher. It was close. T peered into his face with wide eyes, leaning over so much that you almost walked into her. She didn't have to say what her question was with words. Autumn got it. Don't worry, she's nice. She's the best teacher for you too. Autumn made a very serious and reassuring okay sign with his fingers, but an instant it snapped into a pointing gesture. And you're probably going to be shocked, but Miss Murray isn't just a teacher. She's a mom. She has kids that are just her kids, not students. Wow. Let's see. I never wanted a teacher as a parent. Let's weird. Uh, stared in amazement. I didn't know a teacher could have a kid. Well, they can. But now, now I know where we're really going. I can bring us right to the door. The extra burst of confidence got Autumn to take a few long strides ahead of you, and she, keeping his chin high. T bounced across the grass, kicking her knees high to catch up. She didn't let him keep the lead he took. You happily, shyly caught up. You hung back. You happily went up to them. Yes. You ran forward to get back into the middle of the row. You were greeted with grins from both of them. Your steps came back into a steady rhythm between the three of you. T, you're worried about going to a new school. Autumn, why didn't you want Miss Murray's teacher? T, does Ami not know anything about the house before you moved there? Let's see. 'Cause she knows me. Not like all the teachers have met me because I go to that school. His dark brown eyes struck open as wide as they could. His whispered words were pulled out just as long. It was a deep, secret confession. She really knows me, outside school and everything. The seriousness of it only lasted a second. Autumn laughed at it instead. It's gonna be tough to get away with stuff now. Instead, T put on a shocked expression Autumn had just put away. Whoa, I've never seen a teacher outside school. When do they leave? Pretty late, usually, but they do go home and do errands and stuff. I've experienced it. Oh, that was interesting. You learned something new. The longer the walk went on, the more T's gaze was pulled to the forest edge along the road instead of what was right in front of her. Her steps drifted unevenly. You couldn't blame her. You had done the same during the trip a few times, but you weren't the only one who noticed her focus. Hey, so it's kind of funny how both of you like the woods that much. It's the only nice place I've seen here so far. She said it in the plainest way possible, and the words still made Autumn gasp hard enough to cough. Have you been places other than the forest? Yeah, lots. They're not good. I can't believe it. No big deal. Probably right. You shouldn't try to make... Let me think about this. Autumn shook off the shock of T's statement. It hit him. He turned his cheek to the front as he rolled his shoulder. He was winding up for a comeback. I guess I can give you one thing. There is a pretty special kind of fun that, in all my years of living here, you can only ever have out in these very woods. Nowhere else. Really? What is it? He cast a reel and T was hooked on it. She instantly became invested in whatever mystery Autumn had up its line. I'm not gonna tell you. What? T shrieked in a tone so high it scared away a bird who was minding its own business in the tree above. It was hook, line, and sinker. The beat of its wings fluttering through the air matched Autumn's giggling. He brought a hand to his chin and leveled a mischievous glance at T. One day you'll understand. Probably. And that was really it. He closed up his lips, folded his arms, and settled into not explaining for the rest of the walk. T couldn't accept that, or couldn't get the hint. She pestered him with the passion in her words getting stronger every time she repeated them. Tell me the special thing, tell me. Oh my goodness. Too funny, it's not fair, you stayed out of it. Please tell us. Please tell us. He didn't. conversation of your and T's attempts to squeeze Autumn for info and the snickers that escaped from Autumn continued while you headed towards your goal. Down the road some more, over the crossroad, past the main street, taking a turn at the corner. That's when the widest building seen so far came into view. I've been to taller ones because that one only had 2 floors, but there was a lot of those floors. North Acres Elementary School. The name made sense. You wondered exactly how many acres it was. Dozens of other kids were pouring out from a few different paths and mixing together under the front arches above the giant door. You tried to stand up straight, wanted to do things right. Then you went through the door, sticking even closer by your group than on the walk there. Inside was a long hall with different doors and a staircase on the side. It was shiny and dull, like it had been cleaned so hard for so long it made everything even more worn down than normal. Poster boards with a bunch of paper sheets tacked on the lined walls. Nobody was even looking at them. The messages they had might never have been read. The floors had a checkered tile pattern. Some of the kids around made sure to only walk on one of the colors and avoid the other. It was so loud, and there was too much sound from the crowds for the hall to hold. It echoed around, which made it even louder. This place was your school now. Autumn tapped your shoulder and pointed with his other hand. You figured that was his way to say you had to keep going without having to yell, so you could hear. The 3 of you pressed past the other students, making sure you didn't get separated. Step by step, you climbed upwards and forwards. Autumn waved a hand towards the right door when you reached the top. You arrived the first day of class right on time. Oh, what a cute classroom. The little bit of cold you brought inside the school on the tip of your nose and over your cheeks had finally drifted off your face. It was nice and warm when you went into the room. Your brand new class, 5th grade room number 24, smelled like people hard at work. Cut construction paper, crayons, glue. Anything could be made with that. There were tons of leaves stuck to the different colored walls, climbing around the windows, hanging from the shelves, and sneaking out from behind the boards where some of those things could be made. Kids sat together in close groups. The desks were pushed up to make bigger tables. There was just one chair by itself, right at the front, or the back if the way in was the front door. T took in a loud breath of waxy air. Wow, I thought it was going to be ugly. I think it's cool. It is ugly. How would you think that? If she liked it, so did you. Reminds me of you. Adorable. Oh, I have to say that. Looks like my old kindergarten class. You say so confused. Look excited. You look amazed. It reminds me of you. Adorable. Yeah. Autumn shrugged his backpack off to the floor. When it hit the ground, a puff of air came out of the not totally zipped top. Nothing in the place caught his eye in a good way or a bad one. It was like nothing around him existed. Autumn just watched you and T look. He chuckled at the faces you both made. The classes looked the same for every room in every grade every year. Oh, it wasn't that he couldn't see what you did. It was that he'd already seen it 110 times or more. Autumn knew school as well as he knew everything else in Golden Grove. He kicked his backpack behind him to be up against the wall, never glancing down. There was already a bunch of other bags there, set one by one along the far side of the room. They were almost completely hidden under a row of hooks that had coats and jackets and stuff cluttered over them in stacked piles. There weren't enough holders for all the layers of people brought. You're pretty lucky. This is your first time here, but you're only going to have to do it once. We're going to graduate and go to a different school next year. We'll be the new kids then. He talked while he pulled his arms out of his jacket. You'd always seen him wear so far. He tossed it on the top of a rounded lump of the other coats with a hook somewhere below it all. T waited and watched and then tugged at the end of her scarf to undo the knot it was wrapped in. She talked too. I told you this place was weird and never changed. That made Autumn pfft at her. The sound was almost exactly like the noise his backpack made a minute ago. School is different than the entire town, T. T didn't say more words against that. She just got on her tiptoes to sling her untied scarf over Autumn's jacket, building a mountain of stuff on the one little hook even higher. Autumn shoved his bandana deep into one of his pockets and lifted up his other shoulder. You're right. That class is always the same. Seeing Autumn without his fluffy jacket felt like seeing a lion without his mane. He folded his arms high across his chest and gazed upon what you were starting to get was his kingdom. He had all the pride of a lion, even without the jacket. Though Autumn had acted like that was it for getting ready. He hadn't taken his gloves off. Was he going to wear those to class? T held tight to the strap of her bag. It wasn't going with the rest of the packs. That meant she was definitely already done with putting her stuff away. Part of getting to school. T's overalls were the most overclothes she had once the scarf was off. No coat or cool poncho or anything. The overalls were kind of short too. They didn't cover her whole legs. Her ankles had long socks and yellow rubber rain boots to keep them warm, but you had to wonder if she didn't feel cold the same way most people did. Good morning and welcome, students. You glanced over your shoulder. In the doorway is another new person for you to know. Her braids did match a few of the kids there, but she wasn't going to be sitting in the desk with them. She was twice as tall as everybody else in the room. That had to be the teacher, Miss Murray. Her soft brown eyes looked down over you and her neighbors while she tapped a finger against her freckled, speckled face. The pattern on her skin was almost like stars, if the sky was light at night and the stars were the darker part. Her rosy pink lips parted in a smile. She inclined her chin towards Autumn. Nice to see you here, Mr. Culin. This'll be a good year. Yeah. Autumn stretched the word out as far as it could go, and at the same time he opened his arms wide, turned his head away too. He had the kind of tone your mom would have when she had old work friends over and they'd ask if they could set her up on a blind date. Squeakily, cheerfully, and not real. He was trying to be nice, but wasn't trying that hard. Though when his eyes were rolling away, his gaze passed over you and got stuck there. A mischievous grin tugged the corners of his mouth as the sound of his voice went from off-key to chiming. Maybe. Miss Murray's pencil-pointy eyebrows lifted. She blinked one time and then her own smile grew. It was shared with you and T next. Hello, I'm your teacher, Miss Murray. Am I right to say you're Tamarick Ballman and Ashley Oak? Nice to meet you. No. She nodded, I guess, right? She just stared at you. Nice to meet you, Miss Murray. I'm Ashley. T bopped her hands in the air and twisted in place to swing her bag so that it hung behind her back. And I'm Tamarick. That's so great. Miss Murray spoke sweetly in a way that was just nice. It wasn't surprised or relieved to find out the answer. She probably didn't need to ask to know who you were. Teachers knew a lot. You'd be so kind. Would you mind coming over to my desk over there in the far corner? I'd like to talk to you two before class begins. Okay. T finally lowered her hands back down to her side. She still bumped her bag around by pushing it up and down with her butt. It clattered loudly and Miss Murray pretended not to hear. What do you want to talk about? Take a look. Can I go to? Should grab this side. Before it took a step closer. Yes, teacher? Thank you, both of you. She gestured lightly with her hand for you to come and left the doorway. Autumn turned his head to follow the teacher. More and more of his dark hair eclipsed your view of the rest of him as she walked away. When you lost sight of his face, there had been a frown on it. After she was really gone, he swung back towards you, and Autumn was smirking then. Good luck out there! He tipped over one foot and bent his body down. His other leg kicked into the air. He could balance better than a flamingo. Autumn slipped a hand under his jacket on the hook and also under T's scarf, which was still on the top of it, and dug around in the fabric. He didn't come out empty-handed. He had gotten a hold of his favorite notebook and a pencil. Autumn slowly lifted his chest up and brought his one hovering foot down to earth again. That whole thing was graceful, but he followed it by wildly waving his notebook goodbye at you. And the paper fell out when he did it. T squealed, trying to talk, but too fast, so none of it was real words. She reached her arms to Autumn graspingly, like she could pick him up and plant him back where he'd dropped his things. That didn't work either. He stepped away on light feet, carefree, and joined up with one of the groups at the desk. They all raised their heads and waved when he arrived. He was gone, and the teacher was waiting. T squinted her dark red eyes tightly. She directed her gaze towards you because it wasn't like anyone else in the room could understand her. You gave her a look back. Autumn, you said with a smirk. Autumn, you said with a sigh. Not again. Scatterbrain, you said with a grin. Scatterbrain, you said with a grimace. You shook your head. You snickered. Not again. This is gonna be a long, however long it is. You picked up the paper, put it in your pocket without looking. Yeah. You made a beeline to the tan page on the dark blue carpet and snatched it off the ground before somebody could step on it or could blow away and get lost in the middle of a forest. You simply tucked it away. That was taken care of. T pretended to be a jack-in-the-box like she did yesterday. This time it was by bending on her knees before bouncing straight. Her fluffy locks of hair shook around her round cheeks. Come on, Ashley. She skipped off to the teacher's desk, all smiles. You trailed after her lead. You didn't want to be left behind. Off to the corner on the other side of the room was the teacher's old dark brown desk. At least the very top of the wood was dark. The inner part was a lot lighter. You could see that from all the tiny cuts and scratches all over the surface. It was as far away from the desk as it could be. You guessed that was so she could have these kinds of talks without everybody else hearing the whole thing. Miss Murray didn't sit in a cool rolling chair that went behind the desk. She stayed in front and only leaned her back against the top edge. She got to talk to you and T gently because she didn't have to push her voice across a piece of furniture that separates students and teachers. I appreciate you coming to this meeting. I wanted to let you know a little about today, what you can expect from your first day. Why? Well, this class has a unique arrangement of students, but you're the only two who have never attended the school before. Everyone is simply returning after summer break. I'd like to introduce you during a roll call later. I want all the other kids to know who you are. Oh. T flickered at the buckles on her bag. They made a clinking sound when she hit them up and a thump when they landed back down. Her gaze moved around too. The meeting wasn't exciting anymore. You were with T with that. Wasn't a big deal. Your teacher was definitely smart. That helped a lot. Thought you were ready for school, but you weren't sure anymore. Having your own instruction made you feel special. It's going to be so awkward. You're relieved it wasn't only you. Go with that one. You hadn't thought about how this room would know what to call you, and now you wouldn't have to go to every person and tell them. Miss Murray smiled approvingly at how you and T handled the first assignment. I'll make sure it goes well. The teacher slid her hands across the desktop behind her and spread her fingers out wide. In a couple minutes, I'll be telling the class to take their assigned seats. You'll have those spots for the rest of the year. I made a seating plan already, but there's a bit of wiggle room to help you get comfortable if you like. T's hands flew from her bag to her cheeks. That sounded like a smack. Does that mean me and Ashley get to sit together because we're neighbors and friends? Her outburst made you want to cover your face with your hands too, but for a really different reason. You were so nervous. Your heart wasn't going to stop running around your chest until the teacher said if you get to be with T in the whole year or not. A twinkle was in Miss Murray's eyes when she finally said what you were hoping for. You thought she might have paused on purpose to make it more dramatic. Yes, I can put you next to each other. Ha! Made T explode in celebration. She sprung over so close to your face, leaned back without even thinking about it. Even with that, her nose almost poked yours. Ashley, we're gonna sit together! Yay! We've got something then. Anything else? Let's see. They were both your house neighbors. T and Autumn had to be your seat neighbors too. Miss Murray was a really proper lady from what you'd seen. She didn't have one wrinkle on her fancy suit, but creases suddenly appeared around her eyes and mouth after she heard that. The line spelled, "Not again." No, I'm sorry. I'm glad you're getting along with Autumn, but there were students who wanted to sit next to him last year and didn't get to. It's their turn now. Your eyebrows went up so high you almost could have lost them. That many people wanted to sit by Autumn? It was kind of rude to the teacher, but you had to turn your head right around to look at the guy you've been talking about. He was leaning over over the bunch of desks from before and still talking to those other kids you didn't know. There was a big smile on every face. You tilted your head back where it came, but not all the way. You only moved it enough to be looking to the side and said, at T. Her gaze was directed straight at you, too. She gripped the strap of her bag that was weighing against her chest. Since the day you moved in, it had been just the three of you in the cul-de-sac. Even if the day you moved in was yesterday, it was the same group, you, T, and Autumn, neighbors. But you weren't in your neighborhood anymore. On the outside of that street, T was exactly like you were, and Autumn wasn't. You and her were strangers in Golden Grove now. You didn't know people, and they didn't know you. Autumn had been there forever. And it wasn't only that. You already learned something on your first day of school. Autumn was popular. You were glad to have a friend like T even more someday. We do public too, of course. There's other people. Someday, no, you were glad to have a friend like T even more. She could understand what it was like to be you. You were both the odd one out, but you were with each other. Not looking at her didn't stop your teacher from trying to talk to you. Ashley, I'm sure once you're in your seat, you'll get used to it. Soon you won't want to be anywhere else. And if not, you can come talk to me about it. Yes, Miss Murray. She didn't talk the desk up anymore. It was gonna have to win you over on its own or not. So, Miss Murray had to wait for you and T to stop your shared stares of surprise. Then she pointed across the floor to a couple of desks near the back that were side by side. Those are yours. T is closest to the wall, and Ashley, yours is the one next to that. Window seat, gonna sit at the window seat. T happily sung herself a simple song about her brand new desk. Besides the roll call, there won't be any surprises. It'll be a regular, easy first day of class. Thank you for having a chat with me. You can take your seats. T's cheeks inflated as she pushed a smile between the two balls of air. Okay, let's go, Ashley. Bye. The teacher stayed resting up against her desk while you and T went towards your own seats. T sat sent quick, excited glances from the desk, then back to you over and over as you walked towards them. She chatted about how it was going to be so fun being right next to each other and all the things you could do during the year. She beamed so bright it was like her sparkly golden hair made the sunshine that filled the room. T skipped along with her rosy cheeks, and every time she giggled over getting to sit by you, she definitely felt as warm as being in the sun. You definitely felt as warm as being in the sun. You counted every one of your lucky stars that you didn't get put somewhere else. A clap and a call came from where you just left. Attention students, class is starting, take your seats. Just like she said she would, Miss Murray was beginning the lesson. You were right in front of your assigned group of desks when she said it. The red plastic chair Miss Murray had pointed out before was probably really old, but it was brand new to you. You pulled it out from the tables and gave sitting in it a try. Hard, cold, slippery smooth, and the back part wasn't straight. It bent away from the bottom seat part. It felt like leaning against the top of a shiny slide on the playground. If you weren't paying attention, you might fall right off. Maybe that was the point. That was a way to keep kids focused. T was right there next to your left side, by the wall and the window, just like she wanted. Past her, you could see the rustling treetops outside, with their golden fall leaves all bunched together. It kind of looked like T's puffy hair, not as sparkly. She plopped her huge jingling bag on the desk. The actual bag barely fit, and she had to bundle up the straps on top so that it wasn't sneaking over into someone else's workspace. The tips of her rain boots were pressed against the dark blue carpet, and she tapped her heels together. It made the shoes squeak. She was excited for her own little place in the room. Ashley, we're going to be right here for the rest of the year. Yep, I got the best seat, neighbor. T patted her hands against the thick fabric of the bag and giggled in time with the hits. She stayed pretty busy making a beat. You glanced out to the room ahead of you, where the important boards and teacher were. Autumn was there too, in the very first row of seats. It wasn't the same spot he'd been in before when you saw him talking to some people, but those other classmates he was sitting with were just as happy to have him there. He was hanging out with one of his arms across the top edge of his chair and was settled in so snugly he looked like a heavy blanket that had been thrown over it. He moved his head to the side to rest his cheek against his stretched out shoulder. Autumn Sound made himself sit even more relaxedly. When it happened, he noticed you behind him. Autumn firmly pressed down his eyebrows and pushed his mouth open a little. He wasn't there, but when you learned you and T would be together, he wouldn't be there with you. Now he found out. He only looked that way long enough for him to notice that you had noticed his expression. Then your friend, house neighbor, and not seat neighbor lifted the corner of his mouth and sneakily waved the hand draped on the seat at you. Autumn's deep brown-eyed gaze darted over to Miss Murray, directing your attention to her. His eyes kept moving right into a dramatic roll that went all the way around. It wasn't hard to imagine him saying, "Teachers, huh?" or something like that. For a minute, you could picture what it would have been like if he had been right next to you. But he couldn't face you forever. It was class time, and you were left staring at the tiny ponytail on the back of his head again. It was okay. You were close enough. Miss Murray patiently waited for people to get settled. Every seat had a kid in it, and final words were said before the room faded into a short silence. That's when things changed from you being just someone in some room to a student who had to listen to a lesson. Hello, class. Thank you for all being here today. Welcome to your first day of 5th grade. She gave a round of applause. Normally, the people sitting and watching were the ones who clapped for the person standing in the front, but you guessed Miss Murray did things differently. We're going to have a lot of fun this year, and you'll learn a lot too. But also, you're going to be the big kids on campus now, so I'm counting on you to set a good example for the rest of the students here. All right? Yes, Miss Murray. Around half the class answered her. Part was in a loud cheer and others were bored grumbles. The teacher accepted both moods warmly. Thank you. Let's start with roll call then. She crossed past the desk to get a folder off the little cubbies in the corner. She got that and left her stiff brown jacket behind. The teacher flipped the folder open as she stepped back into the center spot. The cozy sweater made everything about her seem softer. You know, the story I'm going to shout out everyone's name in alphabetical order. First name first. You know the story. I'm going to shout out everyone's name in alphabetical order. First name first. When I call your name, raise your hand and say, "Here, Miss Murray. I'm so excited and happy to be at school with you today." That time, almost the whole class started to chatter. There were snickers shared between friends, whining outcries of, "We can't do that," and someone even booed. Okay, just here will work, and now I know you're listening. Her soft voice had a kick to it. She had fun with her job. Let's begin. Your first name started with A. It probably wasn't going to take long for her to be calling you. That was kind of cool. You got to be at the front of the line and wouldn't have to wait forever. And then you were next. You knew not just because she was on your first name letter, but because her keen eyes were on you before she even said anything. Ashley Oak. Let's see here. I was going to say, can we say our nickname? Here, I'm here, Miss Murray, I'm not here. Here, Miss Murray, I'm not. Should we say that? That'd be funny. Shall I shake your, raise your hand, put your hand up. Let's say this. Here, Miss Murray, and I'm so excited and happy to be at school with you today. You were the one to get a response from the class that time. Hushed chuckles came from the clusters of other kids. The teacher gave you an approval with a nod. You sat up tall in your seat after a job well done. A roll call rolled on after your turn. Q-Lin? Mr. Q-Lin didn't really raise his hand. He just popped a thumbs up from his laid-back lean. Here, Miss Murray. That worked, though. Your teacher moved on. Tamrick Bauman? T's arm shot up in record time and already been wound up and ready for that moment. That's me! It wasn't exactly what she was supposed to say, but T got an A for effort. Miss Murray continued with the last of the names. Once every person in a stiff red seat had a turn to say that they were there, Miss Murray gave you and T a real introduction to the class, the one that she warned you would be coming. I talked about how you just moved to town and what people were supposed to call you and everything. Miss Murray must have asked her mom and T and Mama and Papa to know all that. You appreciated that she went to all that work so the other kids would know you. That was the end of not really teaching us anything except names part of the class. Miss Murray took a paper and the folder out of the flap and moved it over to the other side. Please take out your pencils and notebooks now. I'll be going over our plans for the year and what will be expected of all my students. Your mom had packed a fresh notebook with perfectly smooth pages that didn't have a single smudge for you to use. You grabbed something to mark it up with if you needed to. It was a old pencil with cute eraser, cool eraser, colored pencil, a glitter pen. Yes, definitely a glitter pen. Right-handed. That was the one that felt right today. T leaned over her bag to be as close as possible. Her eyes were squinted and set right on Miss Murray. She started clicking her shoes together again even faster than before. If her legs beat any quicker, she might turn into a one-girl-powered motor and drive the desk around the room. T was definitely eager to get the information being told, but there wasn't a single piece of paper or pencil anywhere on her desk to take notes. Maybe she only had to listen to know. Over at the other group of tables, Autumn's face was pressed against his right fist that had popped up against the desk. He was writing slow, lazy lines with his left hand and plain spiral notebook. It wasn't his special one. That was your neighbors, and then there was you. Class was easy stuff, and you went along with it. School was so simple that you didn't need. But you did your best to keep up as much as possible. You tried to follow along, but it was hard for you. You didn't go that well. You didn't pay attention. No. You tried to follow along, but it was hard and didn't go that well. You did the best to keep up as much as possible. Miss Murray talked about the subjects that she'd be covering, upcoming holidays and activities, the way students would get graded, school rules, and even more. You weren't sure she'd ever stop having new things to tell everyone until she cut herself off. She said something about when parent-teacher conferences might happen and just paused there. Autumn? You snuck a glance away from the front to him. You couldn't help it. He totally lost that droopy pose. Instead, Autumn was hunched over a page, and it was from his special notebook then. And he was scribbling in a hurry. Yeah? The answer was as breezy as ever. He didn't try to sound like a student being called out by a teacher. He was polite enough to pull himself up to look at the person speaking to him. Am I going too fast, or is there anything else I can do differently? You've been very uncomfortable. The pencil dropped and clattered on the desk. Both Autumn's hands hovered over the piece of paper. He stared at it unusually, as if he didn't know if it was suddenly too hot to touch or not. For a minute, Autumn didn't know what to do. He blinked, and then he started talking again slowly, thoughtfully. No, it's all right. He leaned fully against his chair again and threaded his fingers together primarily while placing them over the page. From your spot in the back, you could see the edge of an easy smile on the side of his face, and even if you couldn't, you would have been able to hear the smirk in his voice. I wasn't writing down what you're talking about. I'll get that later. Don't worry. Don't worry over it. His eyes went wide as his boldness and a few kids were brave enough themselves to giggle at Autumn's comeback. Miss Murray's usual smile was faint, but it was there. Well, let me know if you change your mind. I will, thanks. She stopped a little break there and tapped her folder with the back of her hand to get the students' attention once more. Nothing but normal school stuff happened for the rest of the time. It was a lot like your old classes in other places. Golden Grove didn't have a secret way of teaching kids that the rest of the country had never heard of. You figured it would be that way, but seeing a regular lesson happen made it clear that that's what you'd be dealing with. And just like that, all the classes you had before, that one was over eventually. But before the teacher let anybody get up, Miss Murray went all around the room to draw piles of papers on a few different groups of desks. She explained how they were stacks of homework sheets, and everyone had to take a packet with them and bring it back and finish tomorrow. Then she said bye to the students and it was okay to leave. It sounded like it wasn't going to be as hard. You didn't care that much. She was your new nemesis. Miss Murray was pretty and smart. You liked her a lot. Qualities she's best so far. Qualities worst. Oh gosh. Out of all the teachers she had, she was the best so far. It was going to be good to see her again the next day and the next day after that. Right next to you, the spell that kept T totally locked on to Miss Murray during class broke. The teacher went over to her desk and T turned to you. She stared at the glitter pen in your hand. Actually, it was the opposite. She was looking at the hand that was holding the glitter pen. I use my right hand too. We're the same again. Oh yeah, I forgot that you had put that I can do both. Let's see. I can use both hands. T used both of her own hands to slap the table and shoot up from her chair. She peered down over your desk, still sunk in your seat. That was the first time you ever had to look to see T. She was so small she didn't think that would have ever happened. What? That's real? She bent her arms back under her like the legs of a closed folding chair, but stretched her neck out forward past her bag into your space. T had gone from high up all the way down to the table level and was watching every twitch of your fingers. How do you do it? Put the glitter pen in the other hand. Alright, here you go. Just watch. I guess I can. It's okay. It's not that special. Okay. You did nothing. Here you go. Just watch. The glitter pen passed from your right hand into your left hand. You lifted up to T's glittering ruby red eyes. That was what she wanted. Your stunt made her whisper in wonderment. Wow. As if that proved something. You hadn't even written anything with it. Anyone could just hold a glitter pen in both hands. She might not have known that because T really didn't ask for anything more. Then T flopped back into her chair. Thanks. I saw cute. I gave a thumbs up. You gave a thumbs up with your right hand. You gave a thumbs up with your right hand. You put your hand to good use and made T giggle sweetly. And then T wasn't talking about hands anymore. That was finished according to her. This time it really was about the glitter pen itself that had her attention. She poked it with her finger. I like your glitter pen. I like it too. I liked it. I'd say I like yours too, but you didn't have anything. More if I boards it. Okay, I've got the best one. I wanted to give it to her. Oh man. Oh, I have more. You can borrow some sometime. Thank you, but how would I use it? Oh yeah, she didn't write in class. Maybe you could take it with you to use for homework. Maybe. T started to hum and got to work unbuckling the two front straps of her bag. Why didn't you? Were you probably going to forget things? Why didn't you write stuff down in class? She simply kept tugging on the clasps to unhook them carefree. I wouldn't read any of that. The buckles clicked open. She flipped the top flap over, and in went one of the homework packets, closing it back up, followed right after. That was all she had to put away, because she hadn't taken anything out of the bag for the whole class. She pulled the bag closer to her and wiggled herself under the strap. There was only one thing left before she was set. T bounced out of her chair, and the heavy bag settled across her shoulder with a rattle. Come on, Ashley. She made a dash to the coat rack where her pink scarf was waiting. Before leaving, remember to take the homework packet and tucked it away in the inner pocket of your bag. Nothing else was forgotten either. You put all your things back where you'd taken them from. You even brushed off the stray pencil shavings and the eraser bits that had gotten on your side, thanks to the other kids in your table group. The desk was all nice and clean when you finished. But as soon as you got up to leave, you couldn't because someone called for you. Hey, Ash! You checked behind you, and there was Autumn, coming up from the front of the class. He was waving with a piece of tan brown lined paper in his hand. Did you drop paper again, you teased? You glared at him. Give him a watch to walk over. Hey, Autumn. It's good you're here. I've got stuff to say. Though I guess I could have told you even if you had gone. We live in the same neighborhood. It sounded like even though Autumn struggled to wrap his head around the idea that the two of you were strangers about a day ago, and now you were people who were going to be seeing each other all the time. There was a soft crinkle as Autumn tapped the edge of his special paper against the right palm again and again. He stopped being able to hear it when Autumn started to ramble, though he kept doing it. Okay, so this paper, here's what happened. I was talking to my mom and dad about it yesterday, back when it was still yesterday, and I realized something. He flapped both of his arms out wide. Autumn was acting as blown away as he must have been when he first learned the thing that he was trying to explain. T finding my paper and sending it to you wasn't some unexpected, unexplainable thing that we wondered about. It was sucky. What? It was? What? It was? Yes. With drama and emotion, Autumn whipped his hair up and down in rapid gestures. He needed you to feel what he was feeling, which turned out to be what he imagined you had been feeling before. You got a paper airplane with a message that had your name and everything. That's exciting. It had to mean something. But then it wasn't a message for it, it was an accident. Whoa, that's the biggest letdown I can even imagine. He had been flying the page around like it was another paper airplane, but he was finally let it rest for a second when his arms dropped. All his bluster became only a sigh. If you were going to get a note from me, it should have had something to say to you. That's what I thought of when I thought about it more. Oh, now I get it. That wasn't the end of the story, though. It was a prologue. Autumn sprung back into action and raised his left arm with the page pressed between his thumb and the rest of his outstretched fingers. And so, I've got something for you. He shook the paper in his hand, grinning cheekily. There was no way out to get what he meant and what was supposed to be for you. You wrote me a note? That's right. Autumn swished his paper one more time to bring it down low enough for you to take. You excitedly squeezed the note from his hand. The page in your fingers was exactly what you remembered from the plain one, somehow tougher and softer than the regular paper, and the same light brown color. But when you read the message, the words scribbled on it were all different than the first time. Welcome to the neighborhood from Q-Lin, this time actually. That's what was written in big clear letters. Stars and a smiley face crowded out on plain spots the words hadn't covered. It was a careful work. The little extra line on the Q was fancy. It was a fancy curve. He didn't even draw the stars from the corner to corner. There weren't lines through the middle of them. The difference between a note Autumn wanted somebody to see and the one you got by accident was huge. Some blurry thing came up past the top edge of the paper. You blinked, distracted, then squinted over the page to figure out what was going on in the room. It was Autumn, high on his tiptoes. He was watching you read the note, smirking, hands tucked behind his back, and all around very pleased with himself. It's pretty good, huh? Yeah, thanks a lot. No, it's great. Okay, well, thanks. I'll keep this forever. Huh. No, it's great. Autumn was already standing as tall as he could, but what you said still uplifted him even more through his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth. That lopsided smile grew until it was full to bursting. Even better! You gave one more glance at the message Autumn had written for you. It was still there, welcoming you to your new neighborhood every time you saw it. When you looked at Autumn himself again, he finally dropped his feet and his hands back to where they normally were. He waited there to see if you were going to do anything else. Is this what class you're writing down? This is what you're writing down, class? You gotta focus in class. I don't worry. Okay. Hey, when teachers... Is that what you're writing while in class? Nope. I came up with that way before. I had other stuff I needed to write down. Alright, so why did you want to know more about the other stuff? You have more things to write down? Oh. Luckily, Adam noticed your expected look. I can't tell you about all of it, but one thing is that I was putting down where everybody's seats were. I had to write it when I could see people sitting around in their spots. Autumn talked fast and firm while jabbing the tip of a finger into his left palm just as fervently. He was good at lecturing for someone who was in 5th grade. Was I supposed to do that after class when everyone was gone, Miss Murray? No, I have reasons for things. Oh, that makes sense. Good. Even though Autumn was the last one talking, he abruptly sliced a hand through the air to get what was the conversation out of the way and have it be about something else. But wait before I forget. I gotta tell you, I'm impressed, Ash. The first day's gotta be the hardest when you're new, and you didn't even break a sweat in class. His hands were on his hips in a commanding pose as he talked energetically. Nothing was held back. He didn't feel smaller next to him in his bright presence. and you don't think that's what he was trying to do. Autumn was starting to know you better, and it was making him look at you differently. You could handle it. What did you think would happen? What did you think? I joked, I'm glad you were here. You held up a confident okay sign. You had done your best, and it made you happy that someone noticed. He closed his eyes and snickered. While you were thinking some kind of thought, he stretched and curled his fingers to feel the way his gloves were fitting. Autumn pinched at the edges to straighten them out better. Anyway, you and T are in the back next to each other, huh? Miss Murray's smart. She's sometimes too smart for me. Oh, I want to sit beside you. Sorry if you were in front. It's so great that we're seat neighbors. The paper crinkled in your hand and you've been gripping it this whole time. You twisted away to pull the zip on your bag. The welcome message you got from Autumn went right next to the packet of homework Miss Murray had given you. Autumn giving you a paper reminded you that you have one to give him too. Oh yes, let's give him the paper. The backpack couldn't be unzipped all the way, or everything would fall out. You only made a hole big enough for reaching around inside. Luckily, the paper from Autumn's special notebook wasn't anything like the homework from Miss Murray. You didn't have to look to know it. You could tell just by touching. But you did have to worry about mixing up the page that was yours to keep the one that wasn't. You had to stick your fingers against the cold, bumpy zipper track to read which caught in the paper you had before. You were sure you'd gotten it right. Then you looked at Autumn again. You dropped this. That's what you said when you held the paper out to him. It worked like a ticket to a time machine because you saw the exact same thing you did yesterday with Autumn, gasping, flailing his hands and all of it. It's both his hands smacked against his chest, pressing it back, while his head, shoulders, and eyes gutted out in total shock. You got another one? He squished himself so much that the next question could only come out as a bashful peep. That's the paper from yesterday, right? The one T found? You glanced at the paper for a second and then back at Autumn. The side of the words was the one that you had up. He could read at least some of the message, even though it was a little bent in your hand. But you guessed it was still a shot, and Autumn didn't want to miss the tiny chance he hadn't been caught losing another piece of paper in his notebook. That was exactly what happened, though. No, it's a different one. Yeah, it looks like it. Then his stiffness melted away, and Autumn stood evenly with his head high again, and grin grew too, same as a flower after winter. You know, Ash, your sorcery amazes me. You and him broke out into laughter together. Autumn losing his papers over and over definitely was not the work of a sorcerer, but it was a lot more fun for the both of you that way. Told you I was magic. Autumn swept his left palm up towards you, kind of like how somebody might ask for a dance in a movie. He did a fancy moves like that a lot. He placed the page right there like the paper was giving him a low five. Autumn crossed his right arm over and reached into his left pocket of his pants. Out came his well-worn notebook with the pages that barely stayed stuck together. He flipped it open with his thumb and positioned the missing paper squarely on top of the rest of the set. He ran his now empty fingers over the tattered sides of the book, pressing the corners and edges that had been sticking out mostly back into straight lines. Then Autumn flickered his wrist to close the notebook, dropped it back into his pocket, and patted the side of his pants fondly. That's it! You did it. The page made it home.